The void stretched without end, a dark sea of silence broken only by the dim light of dying stars and the scattered remains of a destroyed convoy drifting in endless space among the debris. A single cracked escape pod spun slowly, its hull torn. Open by weapons fire, its weak systems blinking red alarms with little strength. Left inside lay a small alien girl, no older than 12. In human years, her thin frame pressed against the cold metal, her pale skin bruised her large luminous eyes. Half closed, as the pod's oxygen fell lower with every passing second, she had been the last to leave the burning ship, her people screaming as the enemy descended like vultures upon the fragile convoy. Her father had shoved her into the pod, his voice breaking as the door sealed his last words, echoing in her mind, "Survive, little star, survive, even if no one comes for you." Now alone in the dark, she watched as her pod spun through endless night. Her mind racing with fear, she tried the communicator. Again, her trembling fingers pressing the cracked controls. "Help me please, anyone, please." Her voice barely more than a whisper. The pod's weak transmitter sent the call into space, but she already knew no one would answer because everyone already knew what she was. Everyone already knew her kind was weak and unwanted. Her species had been hunted across the stars for generations, peaceful and fragile. They had no warriors, no weapons, no armies. They had always trusted in the kindness of others, in alliances, in treaties. But when the predators came, those promises meant nothing. One by one, their allies turned away. One by one, their neighbors closed their gates, until at last her people had only each other, and now even that was gone. Her chest tightened as the oxygen dropped to half her breaths, coming in shallow gasps. Her body shivered in the cold, her mind replaying stories told to her as a child. Stories of humans, the most feared predators in the galaxy, the ones who had teeth and claws. The ones who laughed in battle, the ones who never showed mercy to prey species like hers. Her mother had told her those stories as warnings. If you ever see a human run and hide, now drifting in the void, she almost wished a human ship would appear. Even if it meant being devoured, at least it would be an end better than choking alone in a broken shell. She shook her head at the thought, ashamed of her weakness, but the shadows grew darker around her vision, and the hum of the failing pod slowed her. Gaze drifted to the viewport, cracked but still clear enough to see the wreckage beyond broken hulls, bodies of her people floating in silence, and the cold light of a nearby nebula bathing the field in eerie colors, blues and purples washing over. The destruction like a cruel painting. She pressed her small hands against the glass, whispering, "I do not want to die. Not here, not like this." Then the pod's sensors beeped, faint but real. Her weak eyes widened as a silhouette appeared in the distance. A ship approaching, its massive shape emerging from the void. Her heart leapt, but fear twisted it into terror when the pod system identified the vessel. The icon was unmistakable, a human ship. She had heard whispers even among her people that humans were monsters wearing the skin of kindness, that they consumed meat raw, that they had destroyed stronger empires with nothing but rage and willpower, that they were carnivores who looked at fragile species like hers not as allies but as prey. Her lips trembled as tears slid down her face. If they found her, would they eat her? Would they laugh as she begged? The ship grew larger, filling her view, its metal hull dark grey, its engines burning bright like the eyes of a predator. The insignia, painted on the side, was sharp and brutal, the mark of a species unashamed of what it was. Her pod shuddered as a tractor beam locked onto it, pulling her closer. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go, nowhere but into the maw of the monster. The pod shook as it was drawn into a hangar, her ears ringing from the sudden noise. The doors opened with a metallic groan, cold air rushing in, strong shadows falling across her weak body. Her vision blurred as massive shapes approached, towering over her like giants, heavy boots echoing against steel, the scent of oil and smoke filling the air. Her heart pounded as she tried to push herself back, pressing into the corner of the pod. but her limbs were too weak, her chest too tight, her breath too shallow. Rough voices filled the air, strange and harsh. She could not understand every word, but she understood the tone. Commanding, powerful, dangerous. A beam of light scanned over her. The figures paused, then one of them knelt down. Closer, and for the first time, she saw the face of a human, eyes sharp like a predator's, but not empty, not cruel. Something else lingered there, something she could not understand. His massive hand reached toward her, and she flinched, expecting pain. Unteeth claws, the end. Instead, his hand held water. Her lips trembled as he placed the container near her shaking fingers. His voice softened, though still deep drink. "Little one, you are safe now." She could not believe it. She thought it was a trick thought. The water would burn her thought. The kindness was a mask, yet her body betrayed her. She lifted it and drank the cold water running down her throat, filling her with a life she thought already gone. The human spoke again, turning to his crew, his words. "Low but certain she is alive, and she stays with us." The girl froze, confusion mixing with fear. Why would predators save prey? Why would monsters spare her, the others? Nodded, some with reluctance, some with curiosity, but none with hunger, none with cruelty. She did not understand. The human lifted her with surprising gentleness, carrying her small, fragile body out of the broken pod, as alarms echoed across the hangar. The war outside was not over. She felt the ship rumble as engines roared and weapons charged. The battle that had destroyed her people was not yet finished. And now she was aboard the ship of the most feared predators in the galaxy, her fate bound to theirs. As the hangar doors closed behind her, the last thing she saw was the wreckage of her people drifting into darkness, alone and forgotten. And for the first time, she wondered if the galaxy had been wrong about humanity. The alien girl woke with a sharp gasp, her chest rising in panic as unfamiliar air filled her lungs, thick with the metallic taste of recycled oxygen and something sharper, something that smelled like smoke and iron. Her wide eyes darted around and found herself inside a chamber unlike any she had ever seen, walls of hard steel lined with glowing panels. Strange. Tools resting on shelves, the hum of heavy machinery echoing, like the growl of some beast waiting just beyond the walls. She tried to move, but her body was weak, her limbs trembling as if they carried the weight of planets. Her mind screamed for her to hide, but there was nowhere to run. The only door to the chamber hissed open, and heavy footsteps thundered against the floor. She froze, her heart pounding faster than the alarms that had once filled her doomed convoy. The figures entered, massive, shapes taller, broader, heavier than anything she had imagined. Their skin tones varied, their hair thick, their jaws strong, their eyes sharp and unyielding. These were humans, the predators of the stars. She curled against the wall, clutching the blanket. Someone had placed over her tiny frame, expecting teeth, expecting claws, expecting the end. But instead, the first human who stepped closer held something in his hand, a container of water, the same one she had seen before. His rough voice spoke words she barely understood, yet the tone was calm, steady, not mocking, not cruel. "You are safe now, little one. Drink again." She wanted to refuse, wanted to spit it out, scream that she would not be tricked, but her throat burned, her body betrayed her. She reached with trembling fingers and drank once more, the liquid cool and real, sliding down her throat, giving her strength enough to breathe without the sharp pain of thirst. The human nodded to another, who stepped forward holding a tray of food. Strange. Blocks of dense bread steaming lightly beside fruit. She did not recognize the scent, both frightening and warm. The girl shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. She whispered in her own language, "Why are you doing this? Why not finish me? Why not eat me?" The words spilled from her lips, trembling, filled with the fear of countless stories told since childhood. Humans, the devourers, Humans, the merciless humans who showed no kindness to prey. The first human tilted his head confused, then he crouched, lowering his massive body so his eyes met hers. He did not bare teeth in hunger, he did not growl, he simply looked at her with something she could not name. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if trying to shape his voice into something she would understand. "Because no one else would, and because you are alive." The other humans exchanged glances, some nodding, some frowning. One of them, a scarred woman with eyes like sharpened steel, muttered, "Why risk it? She is not one of us. Her people are already gone. She will slow us down." The commander, the one who had first offered her water, turned to the woman, his voice firm. "Then we will be the ones who did not turn away while the rest of the galaxy abandoned her. We will not." The girl's heart twisted in confusion, their words like broken pieces that refused to fit together. Why would predators risk anything for her when her own allies had left her behind? She hugged her knees tighter still, expecting the trick, still waiting for the cruelty that must surely come. But when the commander reached out again, he touched her shoulder, not with claws, not with pain, but with a strange gentleness, his rough voice softer than the metal world around them. "You will see. We are not what they told you before." She could answer. Alarms wailed across the ship. Red lights flashing, the humans stiffened instantly, their voices sharp, weapons pulled from racks, boots pounding the floor. The scarred woman turned to the commander. "Enemy fleet trailing us, 2 cruisers closing fast." The commander cursed, then looked at the girl, his eyes no longer soft, but fierce like fire in the dark. "Stay here," he ordered her. "You will be safe. Safe." The word echoed in her mind, sharp and unreal. She had never known safety, not since her people had fled from world to world, hunted, driven, abandoned by those who had promised protection. Her small hands shook as the chamber quaked under the first impact, the humans rushing to their stations, engines, roaring weapons, charging, the sound like thunder rolling through the hull. Through the viewport she saw them, the ships of the enemy, the same who had destroyed her convoy, dark and jagged shadows slicing through space, their weapons. Glowing with death, her chest tightened. Her mind screamed, "Hide, hide, hide." She buried her face in the blanket, sobbing as the humans prepared for war. She expected them to run as her people always had. She expected them to scatter, hide, surrender. Anything. To escape, but through the shuddering walls she heard them shout orders, steady voices filled with fire. "We hold the line. We fight. We protect our own." Her heart skipped, her breath caught. What did they mean? Protect their own. She was not their own. She was not even human. She was prey, weak, helpless, useless. Yet when she peeked again through tears, she saw them standing tall, not fleeing, not begging for mercy, but aiming their weapons into the void, ready to face death itself. The ship shook again. Battle beginning, lasers, flashing missiles streaking through the black. The humans moved like predators, not cruel but precise. Every motion filled with purpose and strength, their roars echoing through comms like war drums, shaking the void itself. The alien girl pressed her trembling hands to her ears, unable to block the sound, but unable to look away either. For the first time she saw what it meant to be human. Not the monsters of stories, not the mindless devourers of prey, but something else. Something she did not yet have words for. They did not abandon. They did not run. They fought. Yet in the corner of the chamber as she trembled, she overheard a hushed voice from the comms, not meant for her ears. "We are saving her now. But what if Command wants her for something else? What if she is not a guest, but a tool?" Her breath froze in her chest. The words slithered into her mind, wrapping around her fragile hope, crushing it. Perhaps the humans were not saving her from kindness. Perhaps they wanted her for another reason, something darker, something she could not imagine. Her gaze fell to the commander. His strong back turned as he barked orders, his voice steady. But was it real or only a mask? The ship rocked harder, alarms screaming louder. The battle raging outside, yet within her heart a different battle grew, trust and fear clashing with every breath. Was she truly safe among these predators? Or had she only traded one death for another? And as the chamber lights flickered, casting shadows across the human faces, she wondered if she had stepped from one kind of nightmare into a far more dangerous one. The ship trembled as the battle outside raged. The alien girl huddled in the corner of the chamber, her thin frame wrapped in the rough blanket, her wide eyes fixed on the metal door. Each shudder of the hull felt like the fist of some giant monster slamming against her fragile heart. The voices of humans echoed through the walls, shouts, orders, the roar of weapons firing. She could hear their anger and their determination, and she could not understand it because no one had ever fought like that for her kind before. She pressed her hands against her ears, trying to silence the thunder, but the memories of her people came back. Stronger than the noise, her mother's soft hands shaking as she hid her daughter, her father's voice breaking as he sealed the pod around her, her people's desperate cries as ships burned around them, and through it all the same cruel truth. No one had come. No one had helped, because the galaxy had already decided they were weak and not worth saving. Her breath came sharp, shallow, her tears running down her bruised cheeks until the door slid open with a hiss, and she flinched, expecting the enemy, but instead it was the commander, his tall frame filling the doorway, his armor dented, his face smeared with grease and smoke, his eyes burning like fire, yet his voice softer than she thought possible when he saw her trembling small and lost. He said, "It is over for now, little one. We drove them back." He stepped closer. She curled tighter into herself, thinking he would strike or drag her away, but instead he lowered himself to one knee again, placing his massive frame close to her level. Holding out his hand, not claws, not weapons, just his hand, calloused and strong. He offered it without force, and she stared at it, too afraid to move. Her stomach churned with hunger, the strange food they had given her earlier still untouched on the tray. She had convinced herself it was poison or bait, something to weaken her for whatever cruel plan they had for her. Yet when she looked again at the commander's hand, she saw no hunger in his eyes, only something she could not name, something she did not understand. He spoke slowly, carefully. "You are safe here. You must eat. You must heal." She shook her head, whispering weakly in her own tongue. "Safe does not exist. Nowhere is safe, and no one helps." Her voice broke on the last words because they were the truth she had lived since her people were hunted from world to world. The commander frowned, his sharp brows narrowing. Then he placed the food on the floor near her and rose to his full height, his voice deeper, but not unkind. "We are not the rest of the galaxy. We do not abandon the weak. We do not abandon anyone." She could not believe him. The stories of humans thundered in her mind, the devourers, the predators, the merciless carnivores. Yet here he was, leaving food, not taking it. Here he was, offering kindness without claws, without teeth. It made no sense. It twisted in her mind like a broken puzzle piece that would not fit. She wanted to scream at him, to demand the truth, but her throat closed with fear. Hours passed the ship. Quiet again, the humans returning from battle, their heavy footsteps echoing through the halls, laughter, rough and loud, filling the air. They laughed even after fighting, even after nearly dying. She did not understand it. Her people had never laughed. In war, only wept, only begged, only prayed. But these humans, they laughed as if war was not the end, but simply a test. Her hunger finally betrayed her. Her thin hands trembling as she lifted the strange bread from the tray, she nibbled at the edge, expecting bitterness, expecting pain. Instead, warmth spread across her tongue, filling her body with strength. She had forgotten the taste of strength. She chewed slowly, tears falling faster than before, because even in kindness she felt fear. What if this kindness was only a mask later? When the commander returned, he found the tray half empty. He did not smile with triumph. He did not sneer. He only nodded once, as if satisfied that she had taken what she needed. His voice calm. "You see, we are not monsters, though. We may look like them." But even as his words tried to reach her, the girl overheard something else through the thin walls. Voices of other humans arguing. One said, "She will bring us nothing but trouble. Why keep her alive?" Another said, "Perhaps command. We'll want her, perhaps she will be useful." Her heart froze at that word, useful. She was not a guest, she was not family, she was a tool. The commander's voice cut through the argument, sharp as steel. "I do not care what command once she is alive. She stays. She belongs here." The girl hugged herself tighter, the words swirling in her head. Useful, stays, belongs, none of it made sense. How could the predators of the stars speak of belonging? How could they speak of keeping her safe when her own people had cast her into the void? But even as doubt gnawed at her, she felt her body mending her wounds, closing faster than her kind's fragile medicine had ever managed the injections. The stitching, the strange glowing instruments that at first seemed like torture now revealed themselves as healing, though painful. The human's methods worked better than anything she had known. Her fear battled with a new feeling, something dangerous, something she dared not name. Hope. The ship's lights dimmed. As night cycle began, the humans resting, their laughter fading into snores and murmured conversations. The girl lay curled in her bunk, her eyes heavy, but her mind alive. Every shadow seemed a threat, every creak of the hull, a predator ready to leap. She whispered to herself in her tongue, "Why do they help? Why do they fight? Why do they not run like the others?" As she drifted toward sleep, the ship shuddered faintly. Alarms briefly flickered, then silenced, and she realized with a cold twist in her stomach that the enemy had not been destroyed, only scattered, and they would return. She clutched the blanket tighter, and for the first time in her short life, she wondered if perhaps the only ones who would not abandon her were the very monsters she had been taught to fear, and the weight of that kindness pressed heavier than the cold of space ever had. The alien girl woke to the sound of alarms, her small body shaking as the ship trembled under heavy fire, the red lights flashing across. The metal walls painting everything in shades of blood and warning her wide eyes, darting in panic as the humans shouted orders, moving with sharp disciplined boots, pounding steel voices, rising in steady rhythm that somehow carried no fear even, though the galaxy's deadliest hunters were closing in again. She slipped from her bunk, clutching the blanket to her chest, her breath quick, shallow, as the commander stormed past. His armor half-fastened his face, carved with determination. He shouted, "Through the comms, enemy cruisers incoming, 2 of them heavier than before, no sign of retreat." This time the girl pressed herself against the wall, trembling, as she realized the predators who had destroyed her people had returned, and now there was nowhere left to hide. She expected the humans to run, as her kind always had to flee into the shadows, to scatter and beg for mercy. But they did not. Instead, she watched as they strapped into their stations, hands flying across glowing panels, their weapons charging with the roar of thunder, the ship itself growling like a beast ready to strike back. She whispered to herself in disbelief, "They are not running. Why are they not running?" The commander's voice rang clear across the intercom, steady as iron. "This is our line, we hold it, no retreat, no surrender. If we fall, then we fall standing." The crew roared in answer, fists striking consoles as if the very act of defiance gave them strength. The girl's small heart quaked in her chest. She could not understand it. This was madness. The enemy ships were larger, stronger, more numerous, yet the humans prepared to fight. As if they had already decided they would not bow, the girl stumbled to the viewport, clutching the railing, as the enemy cruisers emerged from the darkness, their black hulls bristling with weapons glowing red like the eyes of demons. The sight froze. Her in terror, memories of her people's ships burning, flashing through her mind. Screams filling her ears, though no sound echoed now. She felt her throat close, her knees buckle yet. Through the haze of fear, she saw the humans unmoved, their sharp eyes locked on their enemy like wolves staring down a threat. The first volley struck, shaking the ship hard, sparks showering from Panel's crew thrown against restraints, alarms screaming damage across the bow shields strained to the breaking point. Yet the commander only growled, "Steady, steady, return fire." And the ship answered its cannons, roaring brilliant streaks of light, crossing the void, slamming into the enemy hull. One cruiser shuddered under the impact, its armor cracking though it did. "Not fall, not yet." The girl's hands gripped the railing tighter, her breath quick. She whispered, "No, please run, please, you cannot win." But no one heard her, or perhaps they chose not to, because humans did not run. The scarred woman from before stood at her station, snarling like a beast as she directed fire squads. Her voice sharp, cut through the chaos. "Give them everything. Make them bleed." The crew obeyed without hesitation, their faces grim, but their eyes alive with fire. It was not the cruelty of predators, it was something different, something she could not name, the will to fight, not because they hungered for blood, but because they refused to abandon each other. The ship shook again, heavier this time, the enemy pounding harder, hull plating. "A tearing!" the girl cried out, stumbling backward as the deck lurched. The commander caught the rail, his jaw set, teeth clenched, shields to 40%. He shouted, "Reroute power from secondary systems. Keep weapons hot, we hold." She could not breathe. She could not understand they were outnumbered, outgunned. Yet none of them spoke of surrender. None of them whispered fear. Instead, they fought with voices like thunder, with hands steady as stone. Even laughter rippled through the comms, one man yelling, "Is that all they have? I thought they wanted a fight." Another answering, "Then let us give them one." The girl pressed her back against the wall, shaking tears on her cheeks because she saw something she had never seen before. She saw beings who would rather die together than live in chains, beings who would fight not for power, not for cruelty, but because to them no one was left behind. She felt the words strike her heart like lightning. "We do not abandon." The battle raged brighter. Faster ships, tearing at each other like titans in the void. One of the enemy cruisers broke formation, retreating fire trailing behind it, yet the other pressed harder, its weapons glowing brighter, preparing for a killing strike. The commander's voice rose fierce. As fire target their core, all batteries now, and the humans obeyed without hesitation, their ship lurching as it released a devastating salvo, railguns roaring, missiles streaking the void. The enemy ship staggered, its glowing light sputtering, but it still lived, still threatened. The girl fell to her knees, whispering, "Stop, please stop, you will all die." She could not bear it. She could not watch them fall like her people had fallen. But as she lifted her eyes, she saw the commander standing tall. Even as sparks rained around him, his gaze steady, his voice unshaken. "Even if we fall as one." The enemy charged its main weapon, light building, into a searing lance of destruction. The girl screamed, covering her face, certain it was the end. But in that instant, the humans struck first, their barrage hitting the enemy's core, tearing through armor in a storm of fire. The enemy ship erupted in brilliant light fragments, scattering across the void, the shockwaves slamming against the human vessel, rocking it hard but leaving it alive. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the panting breaths of the crew. Then cheers erupted raw, fierce, unbroken voices rising together. They had survived. They had won. The girl's tears did not stop. But now they burned with something different. Not only fear, not only grief, but a spark of awe, a spark of something dangerous to her fragile heart. Hope. The commander turned to her, his face smeared with ash, but his eyes steady. He said softly, "You see, little one, this is what it means to be human. We fight not because it is easy, not because we are monsters, but because if we do not stand, then no one will stand." She stared at him, unable to speak, her chest tight with confusion, her mind torn between every story she had ever been told and what her own eyes had just seen. Were they monsters, or were they something else, something far more terrifying and far more beautiful? And as the wreckage of the enemy burned in the distance, she realized a truth that shook her to the core. Humanity stood alone because no one else would. The alien girl clung to the railing as the ship drifted through the smoke of battle wreckage scattered in every direction, glowing shards of broken hulls drifting like dying embers. In a sea of black, her body trembling from the clash she had just witnessed, her heart still racing with terror and awe, because she had seen the humans face death and refuse to bend. She had seen them fight when every other species would have run. And now she could not stop the questions swirling in her fragile mind. The deck was littered with scorched panels, sparks flickering in the air, the crew moving quickly to repair systems, their faces tired but alive, their voices filled with laughter. And grit they spoke of victory as if it were a small thing, as if they had simply swatted aside an insect, though she knew what she had seen was nothing less than a storm of fire that should have consumed them all. Yet they had survived. The commander stood in the center of it all, tall and unbroken. His armor scarred his jaw, set his eyes sharp like the stars themselves, his voice steady as he gave orders. Reroute power to the engines. Patch the wounded, keep weapons hot. They will be back. And his crew obeyed without hesitation, their movements swift, precise. No fear in their steps, only determination. The girl watched from her corner, clutching her blanket, her wide eyes shimmering with fear and confusion. She whispered to herself in her tongue, "Why do they fight like this? Why do they not run?" Her people had never fought. Not like this. They had hidden, begged, bargained, but never stood tall against the storm. And as she thought of it, a weight pressed against her heart. A terrible weight, because a part of her wished her people had been more like these monsters. She flinched as a human voice spoke near her. It was the scarred woman with the steel eyes, the one who had doubted her before. The woman crouched low, her sharp gaze pinning the girl. "Like a blade, you're afraid I can see it. You think we are demons, and maybe we are, but remember this, little one, when the fire comes, when the void closes in, fear will not save you, only fire." Will the woman stood again, walking away, her boots echoing against steel, leaving the words burning in the girl's chest. Later the commander approached, placing a tray before her, more food and water. He sat nearby, not looming, but steady, his voice quieter than the chaos around them. "You saw the battle, you saw how we fight, and you wonder why we do it." She nodded, trembling, too afraid to speak, but her eyes begging for answers. He leaned closer, his voice like iron wrapped in fire. "We fight because if we do not, someone else will be abandoned. Someone else will be hunted. Someone else will die alone in the dark like you almost did. That is why we fight." The words struck her harder than any weapon. Tears slipped down her cheeks because she could not deny them. She remembered the cold of the escape pod, the silence of the void, the despair of knowing no one would come yet. The humans had come. The predators of the stars had come, not to devour her, but to fight for her, to protect her when no one else had, and she did not understand it. The ship jolted. Again, alarms flaring as sensors picked up movement. The enemy not gone, only scattered their signals, flickering at the edge of the void. The crew tensed, weapons primed. The girl's heart raced. She cried out, "No more, please, no more!" But the commander placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, steady, strong, his eyes fierce. "Do not fear. This is the lesson of fire." She shook her head, whispering, "I do not want fire, I want peace." But he only answered, "Peace is won by fire, not by surrender. Watch and learn little." When the enemy ships lunged from the dark, striking again, desperate to finish what they had begun, beams of light cutting through the void. The human ship roared in answer, cannons blazing, railguns, thundering missiles streaking like burning stars. The girl covered her ears, yet forced herself to watch through the viewport, forced herself to see the fire, the chaos, the fury of war, her small body trembling but her eyes wide open. She saw humans boarding pods launched toward the enemy ships, their voices fierce with battle cries as they crossed the void. She saw them slam into enemy hulls, cut through metal with brutal tools, charge into corridors filled with death, their laughter carried even across comms like mad wolves in the hunt, and she thought, this is madness, and yet this is strength. The enemy faltered their formation, breaking under the relentless assault, one cruiser burning, one fleeing again, the humans pressing harder, striking faster, refusing to let them escape until only silence remained. Once more wreckage scattered across the void, the humans returning, victorious again. The girl fell to her knees, whispering over and over, they should have died. They should have died, but they did not. The commander stood above her, his voice steady. This is the first lesson, little one. The lesson of fire strength is not the absence of fear. It is the will to burn brighter than fear. It is the will to fight when no one else will. She raised her tear-filled eyes to him, her voice shaking. Then why help me? Why risk this fire for me? I am nothing, my people are nothing. We were abandoned by all the galaxy. Why not leave me as they did? The commander crouched once more, his hand heavy but gentle on her shoulder, his gaze unwavering, because we are human, and humans do not abandon. The words carved themselves into her heart, deeper than the scars of fear she had carried since birth. And though she still trembled, though she still doubted, something new flickered inside her, something dangerous and fragile, hope mixed with fire. That night, as the ship drifted in silence, repairing wounds, the girl lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small bunk, the echoes of battle still ringing. In her ears, the screams, the fire, the laughter of predators who fought not for prey, but for each other and for her, and she whispered into the dark a vow she did not yet understand. One day I will learn the fire too. The alien girl woke to the steady hum of the ship engines, her body still sore from fear, her mind heavy with the memory of fire. Outside the viewport lay only darkness sprinkled with stars, but she could not forget the light. She had seen the light of humans burning against the void. She sat up, clutching her blanket, breathing fast, as if the silence itself pressed against her chest. The corridor outside her room echoed with heavy boots, voices rising and falling in a language sharp and fierce. She peeked from her doorway, watching. The crew moved their bodies, tired, scarred hands carrying tools and weapons. Their laughter strange and rough but alive. Even after war they laughed as if death had not brushed past them only hours ago. She could not understand it. She envied it. Commander walked among them, calm and unshaken, though his armor still bore scorch marks, though his eyes carried the weight of too many battles. His presence was iron steady, and every crew member straightened as he passed their respect unspoken. But deep, she watched him carefully, the predator who had saved her, the monster who had shown her mercy. She whispered to herself, why do they fight for me? Her stomach twisted with hunger, but also with fear of approaching them. Still she forced her small legs to carry her toward the mess hall. The humans turned to look at her, some smiling, some whispering. She flinched. But the scarred woman from before shoved a tray into her hands, muttering, eat, or you will fall behind, little one. The girl sat at the corner, nibbling slowly, her eyes darting at every laugh, at every shout. She was like a shadow in their den of fire. Later alarms rang again, sharp and sudden. The girl dropped her tray, heart pounding, thinking the enemy had returned. She froze, shaking, but the crew only moved with calm precision. Strapping gear, preparing for drills. The commander's voice roared across the hall. This is no raid. This is training. Fire must be kept alive, or it dies at once. The humans rushed to stations. Weapons. Charged engines roared. The girl stumbled in confusion until the scarred woman grabbed her arm, dragging her along. She was thrown into a seat, strapped down, the woman's steel eyes locking with hers. Listen and learn. Little one, fire is not born, it is forged, and you will forge yours. Now the ship jolted, simulated blasts rattling the walls, humans shouting warnings and counters as if it were a real battle. The girl screamed, but the scarred woman only barked louder. Do not close your eyes. Open. Then watch, see the void, see the enemy even if it is not here, see it. Her eyes burned with tears, yet she obeyed, forcing herself to stare at the flickering displays, the crew moving like hunters, their weapons firing into empty dark, each command crisp, each movement sure and still. They laughed even in drill. They laughed, fire in their voices, until the commander called halt. The engines cooled, silence filling the air again. He turned his gaze toward the girl, his voice cutting through the quiet. "You watched good, now you will understand slowly," she whispered. "But I am weak, I cannot fight, I cannot be like you." He stepped closer, his eyes sharp, his words heavy. "Strength is not given, it is built, and it is built together. You are part of this crew. Now, little one, if you stand with us, you will burn with us." She shook her head, yet her heart betrayed her because something inside her longed for it, longed to not be helpless anymore, longed to carry even a spark of that fire. The next hours turned into lessons, the scarred woman teaching her how to strap a vest, how to steady her hands, how to breathe through fear. The commander explaining maps of stars, routes of war, why humans chose to fight battles, others fled, each word simple but heavy. Each story of loss and defiance etching deeper into the girl's mind. She listened with wide eyes, tears sometimes falling as she realized the price humans had paid, yet they never stopped paying it. When night cycle came, she sat by the viewport. Again, stars endless before her. The girl whispered softly, "My people never fought, we only ran. We thought it was wisdom, but it was weakness, and it killed us all." The words hurt, but speaking them made them real, her hands trembling until she felt another. And beside hers, she turned startled to see the scarred woman leaning against the glass, her expression softer than before. The woman's voice, low, almost gentle running, is not always weakness, little one. But when it is all you do, it will chain you. Forever you want to live, then learn to fight, not to be human, not to be predator, but to survive for those who could not. She pressed a small blade into the girl's hands, its edge dull but its weight heavy. The girl stared wide-eyed, the woman's voice sharper. "Now this is your bond to us. Carry it, keep it close. When fear rises, hold it, and remember, you are not alone anymore." The girl clutched the blade against her chest, her tears falling freely because for the first time in her life, someone had given her not pity, not abandonment, but strength, even if only a sliver of it. The commander appeared in the doorway, watching the scene unfold, his voice deep. "When fire is shared, it grows stronger together. We will make sure you are never left alone again." His words settled into the girl's heart, heavier than iron, but warmer than any flame she had ever known. As the night deepened, she lay in her bunk, blade beside her chest, eyes wide open, unable to sleep, her mind replaying the laughter of humans, the fury of battle, the calm of drills, the scarred woman's words, the commander's vow. And in the quiet of the void, she whispered to herself again and again, "I will not be abandoned. I will burn. I will burn." The alien girl dreamed of fire. She dreamed of ships tearing apart, of stars, burning, of voices screaming. Then she woke and found it was no dream, because the alarms were real this time. The ship shook harder than before, metal groaning lights flashing, the crew rushing to stations. Their faces grim and sharp. The void outside burned with enemy ships closing fast. The girl clutched the dull blade against her chest, her heart hammering, fear crashing over her. Yet she remembered the scarred woman's words, "Hold it and remember. You are not alone." She forced herself up, stumbling through the corridors. People shouted orders, weapons fired. The commander's voice roared like thunder. "Hold the line, hold the fire." Through the viewport she saw them, the enemy swarm, stretching across the dark, their guns blazing like angry stars. The human ship danced between beams, engines, screaming shields, flickering, the crew fighting with savage focus. The girl pressed herself to the wall, trembling but unable to look away. The scarred woman appeared, her face smeared with soot, her eyes blazing. "Take the girl to safety." Someone shouted, but the woman shook her head. "She stays, she learns, she survives." The woman grabbed her arm, dragging her to a smaller station watch. Listen, do not blink. Enemy hammered harder. Explosions rattled the decks, panels cracked, sparks rained. The humans fought with teeth-bared, voices sharp and fearless. Even as hull breaches opened, even as blood spilled, the girl saw it all. She saw their fire, and she felt her own fear twist into something else, something harder. A sudden blast threw her down, smoke filling the corridor. The commander staggered past, blood streaking his arm but still shouting orders, engines to full, weapons to bear. We do not fall, not today. The girl crawled after him, blade clutched in her shaking hands. The ship screamed around her, fire and chaos everywhere. But the humans stood unbroken even in the storm. She thought they were made of iron. They were unkillable, yet she saw their pain, she saw their wounds, and she knew they bled as much as anyone. An explosion tore through the starboard side, sucking air into the void. The girl screamed as the world bent, but strong arms caught her, pulling her back. It was the scarred woman. Teeth clenched, voice sharp. Breathe, little one, breathe. She shoved a mask over the girl's face, sealing her against the vacuum. Another blast, and the commander's voice thundered across the ship. This is the line. We hold it here, or we are gone. Fire with me, brothers and sisters. Fire until the stars themselves remember us. The humans roared in answer, their voices carrying. Through every hall, through every wound, fire, fire, fire. The girl's tears blurred her vision, but her heart pounded with the rhythm of their roar. She staggered to the weapons console, the scarred woman barking at her hands. Here, press here, aim there. Steady. She obeyed, clumsy at first, but the weapon fired bolts of light, streaking into the dark, smashing into enemy hulls. The recoil shook her bones, but she did not stop. Not once. The enemy ships cracked one by one under the storm of human fire, but more kept coming like a tide, endless and merciless. The commander shouted, engines, failing shields at half-hull tearing, but we do not yield. Not yet. The girl screamed through her mask. I can fight. Let me fight. Let me help. And the scarred woman's eyes widened before a fierce grin broke across her face. Then do it, little one, burn with us. She slammed another weapon into the girl's hands, guiding her aim together. They fired again and again until their arms ached, until their throats were raw, until the void itself shook with light. The enemy pressed closer, boarding hooks latching onto the hull. Humans rushed to meet them, steel against steel. Voices fierce, the commander at the front carving through foes with brutal strength, his roar echoing even over the clash of war. The girl watched in awe and terror. Then with resolve she followed, dragging the blade given to her. The scarred woman turned, eyes fierce. Stay close, do not hesitate. She snarled as she cut down an enemy. The girl clutched her blade, trembling as one of the creatures lunged at her. Its eyes cold, its teeth sharp. She screamed and swung the blade, clumsy but desperate. The edge cut shallow, but enough the creature staggered. The scarred woman finished it with a roar. The girl gasped, her hands shaking, but she was still standing, still alive. The battle raged on the ship, groaning, bleeding, but fighting. The girl's fear burned hotter than ever. Yet it no longer chained her, it fueled her, each swing, each breath. I promise I will not be abandoned. I will not run, she screamed as she fought, her small voice lost in the thunder, but carried by the fire around her. At last, the enemy began to break their ships, burning, retreating into the void. The commander standing, bloodied but unbowed, his voice echoing, we stand, we endure, humanity endures. The crew roared their victory, though it was carved from ruin and fire. The girl collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, blade slipping from her hands, tears streaming down her face, but they were not only fear. Now they were something else, something fierce. The scarred woman knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder hard. You did not run. Little one, you fought. You are fire now. The commander approached his armor, scorched, his eyes heavy, but when he looked at the girl, his voice was soft. You are one of us now, never again abandoned, never again alone together. We burn together. We survive. The girl clutched the blade once more, pressing it to her chest, her voice shaking. But firm, I will not forget. I will burn with you always. Outside the viewport, the void stretched endless, the stars cold and silent, but in the heart of that ship fire still burned bright, not only the fire of humanity, but the fire of one small alien. Girl once left to die, now standing unbroken, forged in war, bound forever to those who refuse to leave her behind.